The mating auction was where you went when no one wanted you, when families stopped pretending, when invitations ceased arriving, when the last betrothal dissolved and no one asked why. The Great Hall of Valthera had once hosted coronations. Tonight it held women arranged like goods awaiting inspection. Some stood rigid, bargaining with posture alone. Others wore smiles too bright, too desperate. One wept silently. Another stared at nothing, hands folded over her belly. At the end of the line stood the only woman who didn't try to be seen. Dark fabric swallowed her completely, hood low enough that not even shadow could find her face. The whispers began immediately. That's her. The execution mark. Ilara Crane. Her name moved through the crowd like smoke. Quiet. Inevitable. Unwelcome. She'd learned long ago that stillness drew less attention than fear. Below the platform, a broad-shouldered merchant leaned on his cane. Remove her hood. If she's here to be claimed, we're entitled to see what we're buying. Laughter scattered through the hall. Maybe she doesn't have a face, someone muttered. Or the face she deserves. The auctioneer faltered. The lady retains her veil. By whose permission? The merchant's voice sharpened. The law says a branded witch doesn't get preferences. Witch. The word caught in every throat that had already decided what she was. Her stomach tightened beneath the cloak. They didn't need to see her. They only needed to believe. If she won't show it, it's because it's monstrous. The merchant smiled. Which means no one will claim her. Which means she returns to her sentence. The crowd hushed the way crowds do when they smell blood. Her fingers curled. They were right. If no one claimed her tonight, dawn would bring the original punishment. Not exile, not prison, public execution. Her father stood near the auction clerk, watching as if she were someone else's problem. He didn't look at her. Not once. She could endure the stares, the whispers, but not the hood torn back. Not here. Not in front of all of them. Because the execution sigil wasn't just shame. It was permission. A mark that told any loyal wolf that killing her would be righteous. The auctioneer tried again. The next! The doors burst open. Every conversation died. An alpha presence rolled into the hall like a wave, crushing sound, crushing arrogance, crushing laughter. Not ordinary dominance. Something older, cleaner, absolute. The crowd parted. King Kalin of Valthera entered without ceremony. Black coat, severe lines, silver hair catching torchlight like frost. His pale eyes swept the platform with detached, merciless calm. Kings didn't attend mating auctions. They didn't need to. He walked as if the hall belonged to him, because it did. He stopped before the first woman. She trembled. He moved on. The second lifted her chin in forced bravery. He barely glanced. The third tried to smile. He didn't slow. He continued until he reached the end. Until he stood before the hooded figure. Cold radiated from him even through her cloak. Not emotional cold. Something physical. Winter contained inside skin. The merchant forced a laugh. Your Majesty, surely you didn't come for that one. I did. The simplicity stole the air. But she's branded. Yes. The merchant blinked. You know? Yes. Kalin turned his head slightly, just enough that the merchant caught the edge of his gaze. The man went very still. Would you like to repeat what you said a moment ago, about removing her hood? The merchant's throat bobbed. No, Your Majesty. Good. Silence stretched. If he demanded her hood removed, she would fight. She'd rather die clawing than begging. Then his voice cut through the hall, cold, final, absolutely certain. I'll take her. The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. Even the auctioneer forgot how to breathe. The merchant's voice pitched high with panic. She is execution-bound. Kaelin moved, one step forward. Nothing dramatic. But every wolf felt it. Alpha pressure surged, predatory and lethal, snapping the room into perfect silence. His gaze fixed on the merchant. Say that again. The man's face drained. I meant... No, say it again. The merchant's knees buckled. He dropped to the floor, bowing until his forehead nearly hit stone. I beg forgiveness, Your Majesty. Kaelin turned back to the platform as if the man no longer existed. My queen. The words landed like a brand of their own. Her breath caught beneath the hood. He hadn't seen her, hadn't demanded her face, and yet he'd claimed her with a title that made the entire kingdom flinch. The hall held its breath. For the first time that night, her composure faltered. Because the question was no longer, will she survive? The question was, why would a king choose her and invite war for it? The ride to the palace was silent. Not the silence of comfort. The silence of being watched even after doors closed. She sat opposite him in the darkened carriage, hands folded beneath her cloak. The fabric hid everything. Wrists, fingers, the faint tremor she refused to let show. The veil concealed her face, the execution sigil branded into her skin. Outside, Balthera slid past in streaks of gold and shadow. People lined the streets anyway, even though there was nothing to see. Curiosity didn't require evidence, only a story. Tonight, she'd become one. She could still hear the merchant's voice. Remove her hood. Let us see what we're buying. She could still feel the moment the king stepped forward. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. My queen. He hadn't looked at her when he said it. Hadn't needed to. Now he sat with perfect composure, gloved hands resting loosely over his knee. The carriage lantern swayed, throwing pale light across the hard line of his jaw. He looked carved, unmoved by the world he ruled. She couldn't decide if that was mercy or a different kind of danger. You understand what you are? His voice was calm, not cruel, a question delivered like legal formality. Yes, Your Majesty. And you understand what I am? A king. A pause. More than that. Her fingers tightened inside her sleeves. An alpha king. A ruler whose word could unmake law. A man who'd just dragged a branded woman from an auction hall and called her queen. The carriage wheels smoothed as they approached the palace grounds. She sensed the guards before she saw them. The shift in air. The recognition. The way people stood straighter when he was near. He didn't look out the window. Didn't look at her. You will remain veiled. Her breath caught despite herself. You will not be required to reveal your face. Not to the court, the council, or the public. Not at the wedding. Not afterward. Why? His head tilted slightly, as if she'd asked something irrelevant. Because it is efficient. Efficient. Not kind. Not protective. Not romantic. The word should have felt cold. Instead, it steadied her. People will demand it. They already tried. They will not. The certainty unnerved her more than the power. The inevitability. She watched his hands. The gloves hid his skin. But she remembered the auction hall. The moment he'd stepped forward, and the temperature had dropped, as if winter lived inside him. You're cold. His eyes flicked up, sharp and pale. Am I? Yes. He stared as though evaluating a report. It is irrelevant. But his gaze lingered a fraction longer than necessary. A tiny crack in composure. Then it was gone. The carriage slowed. The palace gates rose ahead, black iron against torchlight. Guards bowed. Servants stood in lines too neat to be real, faces carefully blank. The carriage stopped. Your Majesty. He stepped out first and offered his hand. She hesitated, not from fear of his touch, because she remembered the way the hall had gone silent when he threatened the merchant. She took his hand. The cold was immediate. Not cool skin, not chilled air, true cold. Her breath caught. His fingers tightened slightly, steadying her without a word. Not embarrassed, just aware. Inside, the corridors were long and hushed, lit by sconces and polished stone. Everything smelled clean, controlled, safe the way a cage could be safe. Servants bowed as they passed, eyes flicking to her veil and away, quick, practiced, frightened. She kept her head slightly lowered, not submissive, strategic. A guard led them to a heavy wooden door. The king will see you now. Inside was a study, bookshelves, maps, a fire burning low despite the season. He crossed to the desk and set down a folded document. A contract. Of course it was. No king dragged a condemned woman into a palace for charity. He didn't sit, didn't offer her a chair. The wedding will take place in 3 days. She blinked. 3. You will be prepared. Your Majesty, before you marry me, you should know. No. The single syllable cut cleanly. No? I do not require explanation. You don't know what I am. I know. The words struck harder than any accusation. Her pulse sped. Then why? Because it suits my purpose. Blunt. Almost cruel in honesty. But no malice. No enjoyment. Just fact. What purpose? He studied her veil, deciding how much truth to offer. I require a queen. I require an heir. And I require a marriage that does not weaken my rule. The room narrowed around those words. A marriage that doesn't weaken you. Because love does. Something in him tightened. Not anger. Recognition. Yes. She stared at him through the veil. In the auction hall, she'd thought he was indifferent. Now she realized it was something else. Discipline so extreme it had become absence. You believe love is weakness. His gaze sharpened. I believe love makes men irrational. And irrational rulers bleed kingdoms. The fire snapped quietly. She remembered the merchant's face when the alpha pressure hit him. Not fear of punishment. Fear of being hunted. You sound as though you've seen it. He didn't answer immediately. Then, as if deciding truth was more efficient than mystery. My father loved. He nearly destroyed this kingdom for it. He mistook obsession for devotion, desire for judgment. The council couldn't stop him. The law couldn't stop him. Only death did. Her stomach tightened. And witches? His eyes flickered. She was one. There it was. The root. He crossed the room and held out the contract. The terms are simple. You will remain veiled at all times. No one will see your face. Not my court. Not my guards, not my council. And in return? In return, you will give me an heir. Her mouth went dry. And after that? His expression didn't soften. After that, you will live comfortably. You will be protected. You will hold the title of queen. And you? I will not share a life with you. I will not dine with you unless required. I will not seek your company unless protocol demands it. She felt her heartbeat in her throat. He was offering the one thing she'd never been given. Safety. Without affection. Without cruelty. Without demands she couldn't meet. But one question remained, sharp enough to cut. Why me? He looked at her for a long moment. For the first time, his composure shifted. So slightly it might have been imagined. Not warmth. Not pity. Something like calculation turned into certainty. Because you cannot tempt me. Her stomach dropped. You are veiled. You are condemned. You are afeared. And therefore I believed I could take you without risk. Risk. Of love. Her hands trembled beneath her sleeves. He spoke as if it was mercy, as if it was practical, as if she should be grateful. And yet, he'd walked into an auction hall, threatened a man for calling her execution-bound, and claimed her in front of everyone. Cold men didn't do that without reason. So you're marrying me because you're sure you'll never love me. His gaze didn't waver. Yes. The word landed like a sentence. She stared at the contract, thought of her father's expression as he refused to look at her, the hatred that had lived there for years, the certainty he'd watch her die and call it justice. She thought of the auction hall, the laughter, the entitlement. The word witch spat like filth. Then she looked at the king again. He wasn't kind, but he wasn't cruel. He was offering her a cage lined with silk instead of chains. And right now, that was salvation. She reached for the quill. I accept. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, as if he'd expected resistance. Why? She swallowed. Because you are cold, and cold is better than cruelty. For the first time, he looked genuinely unsettled, as if kindness had never been part of his calculations. Very well. You will be assigned rooms, staff, veils, guards. He turned toward the door. Your Majesty. He paused, hand on the door. If you already knew what I was, why did you threaten that man for insulting me? He didn't turn. His voice came low, controlled, sharper than anything before. Because he forgot who owns the right to judge. Then he left. She stood alone, the contract ink still wet in her mind. Outside, the palace was quiet, but she could feel the kingdom shifting. He'd claimed her, called her queen, and whether he meant to or not, he'd just given the entire court someone new to fear. The council chamber was already full when she entered the next morning. She felt it before the doors opened, the weight of scrutiny gathering like a storm. 2 guards walked behind her, one ahead, not for protection, for containment. The doors opened. Conversation stopped. A long table stretched across the center of the room. High windows let in pale daylight that made everything look colder than it was. At the head sat Kaelin. To his right stood a man she recognized immediately. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, hard mouth. Lord Varon Halbrecht, head of the King's Council, the loudest voice in favor of the witch ban years ago. His eyes didn't soften when they landed on her veil. They sharpened. Your Majesty, Varon inclined his head to Kaelin without taking his gaze off her. Is it necessary for her to attend this discussion? Yes, Varon's jaw tightened. With respect, she has not yet been legally wed. She will be. The tone ended that portion of the discussion, but not the rest. She stood near the window as instructed, silent, still. She'd learned that speaking too early only gave men like Varon ammunition. The contract lay before the council. Varon picked it up. You intend to nullify her sentence upon marriage? Yes. And if she refuses marriage? She will not. His gaze flicked toward her. Perhaps we should confirm that. Lady Crane, do you consent? The use of her old title was deliberate. She inclined her head slightly. Yes. To becoming queen, or to becoming protected from execution? The room stilled. Kaelin's gaze sharpened. Elara. Not a command. An invitation. She understood what Varon wanted. He wanted her to sound desperate. To sound like she was clinging to survival. To look small. She lifted her chin slightly beneath the veil. I consent to marriage. Protection is a consequence. Varon studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. Brave words for someone whose life depends on a signature. Heat rose beneath her skin. Before she could respond, the temperature in the room shifted. Kaelin hadn't moved, but something in him had. His voice cut through the chamber, low and lethal. "Lord Varen," the older man straightened. "Yes, Your Majesty. You will address my future queen with respect." Not loud, final. Varen held his gaze for half a second too long, then bowed his head. "Of course." The tension didn't fade. It settled. Varen turned back to the parchment. "You also intend to allow her to remain veiled indefinitely?" "Yes." "And what does that say to the kingdom? That our king marries a faceless woman? That I choose what I protect?" The room went silent again. Varen's expression hardened. "Your Majesty, the witch ban was enacted to preserve stability." "I am aware." "You signed it." "I remember." "And now you marry the very thing you condemned." She felt every eye on her again. Condemned. The word hit harder in this room than at the auction, because here, it was law. Kaelin rose slowly from his seat. The movement drew every gaze. He didn't look angry. He looked certain. "The law condemned an unclaimed witch. She is no longer unclaimed." Varen's voice sharpened slightly. "A brand does not vanish with a ring." "No, but it loses authority." The two men held each other's gaze across the table. This wasn't about her. It was about power, about precedent, about who shaped the kingdom's future. Finally, Varen set the parchment down. "The contract will be signed, but understand this, Your Majesty." The air tightened. "The court will test her." Her fingers curled slightly beneath her sleeves. Kaelin didn't blink. "They may try." Varen inclined his head, but his eyes were cold. When the council dismissed, Kaelin didn't immediately leave. She remained by the window. He approached slowly. "You did not flinch." "I've had practice." "At what?" "At being spoken about as if I'm not present." His gaze lingered on her veil. "And yet you chose to answer." "Yes." "Why?" She considered that. "Because if I do not speak for myself, men like Lord Varen will speak for me." Something in his expression shifted. Approval. Measured. "You should be careful." "Of him?" "Of me." The words caught her off guard. She looked at him fully. "You have not been cruel." "No, but I am not gentle." She studied his face. The severity. The restraint. The way his hands were always controlled. "You were not gentle at the auction." A flicker crossed his eyes. "That was necessary." "You didn't have to threaten him." "Yes, I did." The certainty in his voice made her breath pause. "He was testing what I would tolerate. I do not allow public disrespect of what I claim." Claim. The word settled between them. Not romantic. Territorial. Her pulse skipped. "You claim many things?" "I claim what is mine." "And am I yours?" He held her gaze. "Yes." The word wasn't possessive in tone, but it landed like one. Something in her chest tightened unexpectedly. Not fear, not gratitude, something else. He stepped slightly closer. "You will not allow Varen to provoke you." "I won't." "And you will not remove your veil." "I won't." His gaze softened by a fraction. "Good." He turned toward the door. "Ilara." She froze at the sound of her name. "Yes?" "If he calls you condemned again," his voice lowered, "he will regret it." The words were simple, but there was nothing calm in them. Later, alone in her chambers, she removed her hood for the first time inside palace walls. She stood before the fire. The execution sigil gleamed faintly in the flame's reflection. She traced it lightly with her fingers. Condemned, execution-bound, monster. And yet, he'd said my queen, not once, but twice. He claimed he could never love her, that she was safe precisely because she was untempting. But men who felt nothing didn't defend reputations. Men who felt nothing didn't threaten other wolves for speaking out of turn. Cold men didn't burn so fiercely beneath restraint. She lowered her hood slowly back into place. 3 days until the wedding. 3 days until she became untouchable. Or 3 days until the entire kingdom tested how cold their king truly was. The cathedral bells rang before dawn. By midday, the capital was unrecognizable. Every balcony filled, every rooftop crowded. Silk banners hung from stone arches. Soldiers lined the streets in perfect formation. Valthera hadn't celebrated a royal wedding in over a decade. But this wasn't celebration. It was spectacle. And spectacle demanded proof. She stood alone in a side chamber of the cathedral, hands folded over a bouquet she couldn't smell through her veil. The fabric was heavier today, layered thick enough to defy even the brightest sunlight. The blind seamstresses had worked through the night to prepare it. Blind, by royal order, a precaution, a promise, a cage lined with velvet. Outside she could hear the murmur of thousands. They say she's disfigured. They say she murdered a noble. They say the king is proving a point. They say he's gone mad. Each whisper lodged somewhere deep and unyielding. A knock sounded. Your Majesty, it is time. She nodded once. The doors opened. The cathedral swallowed her whole. Light streamed through stained glass in fractured colors. Nobles filled every pew, jewels flashing like sharp teeth in the sun. And at the far end, he stood waiting. King Kaelin wore black. Not ceremonial gold, not celebratory silver. Black. The color of judgment. His posture was immaculate, his expression unreadable. But as she began her slow walk down the aisle, his eyes didn't leave her. Not the veil. Her. The crowd didn't bother pretending now. Whispers moved openly. That mark is real. He's humiliating the throne. Lord Varen tried to stop it. Watch. He will demand she unveil. The priest began the ceremony, voice echoing in the vast space, reverent and steady. She reached the altar. He extended his hand. She placed hers in it. The cold was sharper today, or perhaps she was more aware of it. A subtle crackle of frost formed along his glove where it touched her skin. She saw it. So did the front row. A ripple passed through the pews. The priest faltered for half a second before continuing. Kaelin didn't react, didn't release her, didn't hide the frost. The vows were spoken, measured, formal. When it was his turn, he didn't hesitate. I claim you, my wife, my queen. The words struck harder this time, because they were no longer hypothetical. They were law. The priest nodded. And you, Lady Ilara Crane. A voice cut across the cathedral. Execution-bound Ilara Crane. The interruption shattered decorum. Heads turned instantly. Lord Varen stood from the front pew. Deliberate, calm. Every noble present froze. The priest went pale. Lord Varen. Varen ignored him. He addressed the king directly. Your Majesty, before this ceremony is finalized, I request confirmation. The cathedral held its breath. Kaelin didn't move. Confirmation of what? That the woman you are about to bind to the throne bears the royal execution sigil. The word echoed. Sigil. Her blood drained. Varen's voice didn't tremble. Valthera deserves transparency. A murmur swept the room. Not agreement. Not disagreement. Hunger. They wanted to see, to confirm, to witness shame. Kaylin's grip on her hand tightened, not painfully, protectively. Lord Varen, this is not the council chamber. And yet, it is the kingdom watching. His eyes slid to her veil. If she carries no mark, there should be no objection. The silence thickened. Her pulse thundered in her ears. This was the moment. The humiliation. The stripping. The spectacle. She'd expected it, braced for it, and still, her throat closed. Kaylin turned to face Varen fully. His expression didn't change, but the temperature did. A visible shimmer passed across the stone floor. Frost spread outward from his boots in thin white veins. The nearest nobles recoiled. You mistake something. His voice was soft. Varen didn't step back. I am requesting. You are challenging. The Frost climbed the pew legs nearest him. You challenge my authority, my decision, and my queen. The word reverberated. Mine. She felt it more than heard it. Varen's jaw tightened. The throne cannot afford weakness. And what weakness do you see? A branded witch. The Frost surged, this time not subtle. Ice crawled across the cathedral floor in a sharp, crackling wave, stopping inches from Varen's polished boots. Gasps erupted. The priest stumbled backward. Kaylin stepped forward. The movement was slow, measured, but predatory. You speak of weakness. You mistake mercy for softness. His pale eyes burned now, not warm, bright, dangerous. If you utter that word again, I will remind you who signs execution orders. The cathedral went utterly still. Varen's face paled. For the first time, calculation flickered behind his eyes. He bowed stiffly. My loyalty is to the throne. And the throne is standing before you. Silence. Then Varen sat. The Frost receded slowly, as if drawn back by invisible command. The priest, shaken, resumed the ceremony. Her knees felt weak. Not from fear, from something else. He'd done it again. He'd chosen war. For her. The priest cleared his throat. You may seal the union. The cathedral leaned forward as one. Everyone expected him to lift the veil. To claim publicly. To prove dominance. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. The cold kiss burned. Not ice, not frost. Something deeper. A tremor passed through her at the contact. The mate bond, faint, embryonic, flickered like a struck match. The crowd exhaled in collective confusion. No unveiling, no spectacle, just a king who refused to let them see. When he straightened, he didn't release her hand. And when he leaned slightly closer, his voice was meant only for her. I told you, they will not take what is mine. Her breath caught, not from cold, from the weight of it. As they exited the cathedral into the roar of the crowd, she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to consider. He believed love weakened rulers. He believed witches had nearly destroyed the kingdom. He believed he could never love her. And yet, he looked ready to burn the world for a word spoken against her. The contradiction unsettled her. But deeper than that, it stirred something dangerous. Because cold men didn't fight like this for things they didn't value. And she was beginning to wonder, what would happen if that control ever cracked? The palace was quieter after midnight. Celebrations faded quickly in Valthera. Nobles preferred to speculate rather than celebrate. By the time she was escorted to the royal bedchamber, the corridors had already gone still. The room was vast. High ceilings, heavy curtains, a fire burning low despite the season. She stood beside the bed, veiled still, her pulse steady only because she forced it to be. This was no longer survival. This was something else. The door opened. He entered without ceremony. He'd removed his formal coat. The black shirt beneath was unlaced at the throat, exposing pale skin at his collarbone. The frost beneath it was visible tonight, not imagined. Thin, crystalline lines traced faint patterns under his skin, like something carved too close to the surface. He closed the door. The latch echoed. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You may remove the outer hood." She did. The heavier layer fell away, leaving only the thin veil across her face. He watched the movement closely, not lustfully, carefully, as if proximity itself were dangerous. "You understand this is for an heir." "Yes. And that once you are with child, you will no longer come to me." The words didn't tremble. He studied her. "You accepted those terms." "I did." Silence stretched between them. Then he stepped closer. The temperature shifted immediately. The firelight flickered as cold pressed into warmth. He withdrew a strip of black silk. "You will blindfold me." Her breath caught. "Because you don't trust yourself?" "I trust discipline. Instinct is another matter." She stepped forward and tied the silk over his eyes. Her fingers brushed his temples. His breath changed. Not dramatically, just enough. "You may remove the veil." Her heart hammered, but she removed it. The execution sigil gleamed faintly in the firelight. He couldn't see it, but he felt the shift in air. His hands found her wrists, slowly, deliberately. His skin was cold enough to make her gasp. Not unpleasant, just shocking. "Too cold?" "No." She meant it. The contrast did something to her. Her warmth rose instinctively in response, as if her body refused to yield to winter. His hands traced upward from her wrists to her shoulders. He memorized her shape through touch alone. No sight. No judgment. Just pressure and restraint. When his fingers brushed the bare skin at her collarbone, frost flared faintly along his knuckles. She saw it. And instead of recoiling, she stepped closer. The frost met heat and melted. Just slightly. He inhaled sharply. Ilara. Not formal, not distant. Her name. He kissed her then, not tentative, not restrained. His mouth was cool, but the kiss deepened quickly, hunger slipping through discipline like water through cracks. The mate bond ignited. Hard. A sharp pulse in her chest that made her fingers curl into his shirt. He froze. What was that? The bond. It shouldn't. It does. He kissed her again. Harder. Less careful. The cold along his collarbone flickered, faltered. She slid her hands beneath his shirt. Her palms met the unnatural chill centered over his heart. Not emptiness. Resistance. You bound it. Yes. Why? Because love makes kings weak. His voice strained as he spoke. She pressed her hand flat over the coldest point. And what does this make you? He pulled her closer suddenly, one hand gripping her waist, the other sliding up her spine. Careless. The word came rough. His composure was thinning. The mate bond surged again. Not gentle this time. Possessive. Hungry. His breath hitched. You are not safe for me. She looked up at him. And you are not safe for me. The honesty shattered something. He kissed her throat. Cold lips trailing heat down her skin. Her body arched instinctively toward him. The contrast between winter and flame intensified. His hands were everywhere now, shoulders, waist, hips, no longer mapping cautiously, but claiming. The frost beneath his skin cracked audibly this time. A faint sound, like ice under pressure. He groaned, not in pain, in strain. Elara. Her name again, not controlled. She pulled him back toward the bed. He followed without resistance. The blindfold remained in place. Trust, or desperation. When they came together, it was not gentle. It was not brutal either. It was consuming. Cold met heat, and neither yielded. The mate bond snapped into place fully for the first time. A visible pulse of frost burst outward from his chest, then melted instantly beneath her touch. He gasped against her shoulder. The frost shattered. Not entirely, but enough. The severed place in him pulsed violently. Alive. He stilled abruptly, breathing hard. Elara. This time it sounded almost like a warning. What? If this continues, yes? I may not stop. Her pulse thundered. Then don't. That broke him. The restraint snapped. His hands tightened, his mouth found hers again, and the cold that had defined him for years faltered beneath heat he'd tried to erase. When they finally lay tangled together, breath uneven, his arm remained around her. He didn't withdraw immediately, didn't dress, didn't leave. His hand rested possessively over her stomach, instinctive, guarding. You were not safe, he murmured. For you? For my control. She traced the cracked frost at his collarbone. And yet you stayed. He didn't answer, because he had no explanation that wouldn't sound like confession. She woke before dawn. The fire in the hearth had burned low during the night. The room should have been cold. It wasn't. He lay beside her, one arm draped across her waist. Warm. Not cool. Not chilled. Warm. For a moment she didn't move. She simply lay there, listening to his breathing. Even. Steady. Deep with sleep. He'd stayed. He hadn't withdrawn the moment duty was fulfilled. He hadn't dressed and vanished into corridors of stone and law. He'd remained. His hand tightened slightly against her waist as if sensing the shift in her awareness. Not consciously. Instinctively. The mate bond pulsed softly between them. Stronger than last night. Not painful. Not sharp. Anchored. She slowly turned her head. The frost that had traced his collarbone the night before was still there, but thinner. Hairline fractures cut through it like cracks in glass. She reached carefully, brushing her fingertips across the chilled skin at his chest. It didn't burn her this time. It yielded, just slightly. His breathing changed. His arm tightened. Elara, he murmured without waking fully. Her name sounded different in sleep. Less controlled, less guarded. She studied his face. Without the hard set of his jaw and the discipline of wakefulness, he looked younger, less carved, more human. Her fingers trailed upward to the edge of the frost. The cracks widened faintly beneath her touch. A soft sound escaped him. Not pain, something else. Resistance. His eyes opened slowly. Silver gaze unfocused at first, then sharpening. You're warm. His brow furrowed. I am not. You are. He looked down at his arm around her waist, as if confirming. His expression shifted. Subtle, controlled, but unsettled. The hearth. The hearth is nearly out. Silence settled between them. He removed his arm slowly, as if testing something. The space he left cooled immediately. The warmth receded. His gaze returned to her, measuring. You're watching for change. Yes. Why? Because something is happening. He didn't deny it. He sat up slowly. The frost along his chest glimmered faintly in the early light, filtering through curtains. Last night it cracked. He didn't pretend ignorance. Yes. And it didn't close. No. A long pause. She sat up beside him. Does it hurt? He considered that. Yes. How? He looked at her directly. Like pressure. From what? He hesitated, then quietly. From something returning. The admission shifted the air between them. You bound it, but you didn't destroy it. No. You can't. His jaw tightened. Love can be disciplined. She tilted her head slightly, but not erased. He didn't answer, because the frost at his chest pulsed again. A faint crack split across it. Visible, audible. He inhaled sharply. The mate bond flared in response, not gentle this time, instinctive. Her hand moved without thought, pressing to his chest. Heat met frost. The crack widened. His hand shot up, gripping her wrist. Not in anger, in reaction. Elara. His voice was strained. Does that hurt? Yes. Stop me. He didn't. Her palm stayed over his heart. Warmth spread outward slowly. The frost hissed faintly where it met her skin. Not melting. Thinning. You shouldn't do that. Why? Because it weakens the bind. And that frightens you? His grip tightened slightly. Yes. There it was. Not anger. Fear. She softened her touch. I am not your father's mistake. His gaze snapped to hers. I did not say, you don't have to. Silence lingered. Then, you are not a mistake. Then why do you look as though I am undoing you? His eyes darkened slightly. Because you are. The honesty hit harder than accusation. The mate bond pulsed again. He felt it. She felt it. Stronger, warmer, less fragile. If this continues, I will not be able to control it. You mean love? He looked away briefly. Yes. The frost cracked again. Another hairline split. He closed his eyes briefly. It was clean before. What was? The severing. Her breath caught. You feel it failing? Yes. And you don't want it to. I do not know what I want. That might have been the most honest thing he'd said yet. She withdrew her hand slowly. The frost stabilized. Not repaired. Paused. He stood. The cold returned to him gradually as distance grew. He pulled on his shirt without meeting her eyes. You should be pleased. If the bond strengthens, you will conceive more easily. The words were practical, deliberate, defensive. She studied him. You're hiding behind duty. Yes. At least you admit it. He paused at the door. Elara. Yes? If I begin to change, you already have. His jaw tightened. If I begin to lose control, she held his gaze steadily. I will not fear you. Something in his posture shifted at that. Then he left. The door closed. The room cooled again, but not completely. She remained seated on the bed, fingertips still tingling from where frost had thinned beneath her touch. Hairline cracks. Not catastrophic. Not visible to the kingdom, but real and growing. The foreign delegation arrived under banners of blue and silver. Trade envoys from the northern provinces, flanked by advisors and scribes. The summit was meant to signal stability, continuity, control. It did not. The great hall was full again, not like the auction, not like the wedding, but charged all the same. Nobles lined the perimeter. Council members stood at attention. Lord Varen positioned himself slightly behind and to the right of the throne. She stood at Kaelin's side, veiled, unyielding. The mate bond pulsed steadily between them now, no longer a flicker, no longer fragile, constant, warm. The northern envoy, Lord Rethmar, bowed stiffly. Your Majesty, we appreciate the opportunity to discuss renewed trade agreements. Kaelin inclined his head. We value continued alliance. Rethmar's gaze flicked briefly to her. A pause. A kingdom's stability is often reflected in its leadership. Subtle, but intentional. Kaelin's expression didn't shift. Valthera is stable. Rethmar cleared his throat. There have been reports. Of course there had. Reports of frost in a cathedral. Reports of a branded queen. Reports of visible cracks in a king who had once been unshakable. Varen stepped forward smoothly. The rumors are exaggerated. The throne remains uncompromised. Uncompromised. The word hung like a blade. Rethmar studied Kaelin. And the queen? The hall quieted. She felt every eye turn toward her again. Kaelin's hand found hers. Not loosely. Firmly. She is my wife. Rethmar's gaze didn't soften. With respect, Your Majesty, my province does not trade with witches. The word echoed. Witch, not whispered, spoken plainly. She felt the old heat rise, the humiliation, the auction, the merchant. Varen didn't interrupt this time. He let the silence stretch. Testing. Measuring. Kaelin's fingers tightened. The queen is not under discussion. On the contrary, she is precisely under discussion. Trade depends on perception. Perception depends on legitimacy. The word was deliberate. Legitimacy. As if she were a blemish on the throne. The mate bond surged. Hard. She inhaled sharply. He felt it too. His jaw tightened. The frost at his collarbone pulsed visibly beneath his shirt. Your province is dependent on Valthera's ports. Rethmar didn't retreat. And Valthera depends on our mineral exports. A challenge. Clear. Varen finally stepped in. Perhaps a simple demonstration would resolve doubt. She went still. Not again. Not here. Demonstration of what? Kaelin asked. Control. The hall tightened. Rethmar folded his hands. If Your Majesty's affections do not influence policy, prove it. Silence. Sharp. Dangerous. Kaelin's grip on her hand tightened almost painfully. Not to hurt her. To anchor himself. My affections are not relevant to governance. Rethmar held his gaze. Then declare it. Declare that your marriage is strategic, not sentimental. The word cut deeper than accusation. Sentimental. Weak. He didn't speak immediately. The mate bond flared violently. She felt it. Hot, urgent, overwhelming. His heart hammered beneath her palm where their hands met. The frost spread visibly now, creeping up his neck in thin white lines. He was fighting something. Internally. Violently. Varen saw it. He stepped closer. This is precisely the instability we feared. Your Majesty, Rethmar pressed. If the Queen holds no emotional influence over you, say so plainly. The hall leaned forward. Her pulse thundered. This was the bind. If he denied her, he proved stability. He saved the trade. If he claimed her, he proved vulnerability. He confirmed rumor. She could feel his control fracturing. She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to. He looked at her, really looked. The mate bond roared between them. The frost cracked audibly. Varen's eyes widened slightly. Your Majesty? Answer. The pressure snapped. Kaelin rose slowly from the throne. The movement alone sent cold radiating outward. Frost surged across the marble floor. Nobles recoiled. The northern envoy stepped back instinctively. His voice came low at first, then stronger. You wish me to declare that my queen holds no influence over me? Rethmar nodded stiffly. Yes. Kaelin looked at her. The veil, the brand hidden beneath. The woman who had warmed him, the woman who had cracked ice he believed permanent. The woman he had chosen because he thought he could not love her. The frost climbed across his chest, up his throat. His breathing became uneven. Elara. She felt it. The severed place in him, the thing he had bound, straining, breaking. He turned back to the hall. No. The single word echoed. Rethmar stiffened. Varen's face went white. No. He repeated it louder now. My queen influences me. The frost burst outward. Ice shot across the throne steps. Cracks splintered across pillars. Gasps filled the hall. He didn't stop. She influences me because she is my wife. The frost spread further. She influences me because she is mine. The mate bond detonated between them. And then, he looked at her fully, and said the one thing he had sworn never to allow. I love her. The word shattered something ancient. The frost along his chest exploded outward. White crystal surged up his neck, across his jaw. His breath left him in a ragged exhale. Pain contorted his face. The hall erupted. Elara, he began. Then his body convulsed. The ice surged inward this time, not outward, inward, toward his heart. He staggered. She caught him. The frost burned her skin instantly. Elara, he rasped, barely audible now. Don't! The word was broken. Too late. The ritual snapped fully into place. The severed bind reacted violently. His body went rigid in her arms. Ice spread rapidly across his chest in branching veins. The hall descended into chaos. Elara! Someone shouted. The king! Varen stared in horror. Rethmar stepped back in shock. She held him as his knees buckled. She lowered him to the marble floor. His skin was freezing beneath her hands. The frost crystallized across his ribs. His eyes struggled to focus. There's a curse. The word struck like a bell. A curse on my bloodline. The hall blurred around her. If I love, he forced out, I die. The frost reached his throat. Elara. His breath stuttered. I thought... His fingers tightened weakly around hers. I thought you were safe. The ice sealed over his heart. His eyes went wide with pain. And then, he collapsed fully in her arms. The hall went silent. The king of Valthera lay frozen on the marble, because he had chosen love. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. The king of Valthera lay frozen on the cathedral floor. Ice spread across his chest in sharp crystalline veins. His breath came shallow, fogging faintly against the air before turning thin. Elara! The shout came from somewhere distant. She didn't look up. Her hands were already pressed to his chest. The frost burned, but beneath it, she could feel it. Not death. Something constricting. Something ancient. Clear the hall. Her voice didn't shake. It cut. Guards moved immediately. Nobles were ushered out in waves of silk and panic. The foreign delegation was escorted back with tight, controlled urgency. Lord Varen didn't move. He stood staring at the king, face drained of color. Elara, he began. She turned her head slowly. If there had been fear in her before, it was gone now. Leave. The command held no hysteria, only authority. Varen hesitated, then bowed stiffly and stepped back. Within minutes, the great hall was nearly empty. Only a handful of guards remained at a distance. She lowered herself fully to the marble, cradling his head. His skin was ice cold now. The frost had sealed over his sternum entirely. His eyes fluttered open weakly. There's no cure. Don't. Her voice was sharp. You don't know that. He tried to breathe more deeply. The frost thickened. My ancestors sought certainty. The words came broken. That no king of Valthera would ever be ruled by love. She leaned closer. Certainty of what? A witch carved it into our blood. The word echoed. Witch. The first king feared obsession. He feared becoming my father. Ice crept higher along his throat. So he paid for a spell. A severing? Yes. If love awakens, the heart freezes. Her pulse roared in her ears. Why didn't you tell me? I thought... His breath faltered. If I chose someone I could never love. He looked at her. Really looked, even through the pain. I would be safe. The frost surged again. He winced. I was wrong. His fingers tightened weakly around hers. I was never safe from you. Her vision blurred for half a second. Not from tears. From fury. Ancient kings. Cowardly bargains. Men who carved out parts of themselves and called it strength. You will not die because you loved me? He smiled faintly. It hurt to see. I would, if it meant loving you was real. The frost thickened. His lips began to pale. Ilara. His voice broke. Don't blame yourself. Her hands tightened over his chest. Blame? Ice bit into her palms. You think I will stand here and blame myself? Her voice dropped lower. Dangerous. I am a witch. The word hung between them. He inhaled sharply. Ilara, you banned my kind. Your ancestors hunted us. The frost pulsed violently at the word ancestors. She leaned closer. You built a curse with witchcraft, and then blamed witches for the fear you purchased. His eyes widened slightly. The frost reached his jaw. Stop. I won't. Her hands pressed harder against the ice. Heat rose beneath her skin. Not gentle, not subtle. Magic, bound for years, suppressed, controlled. She could feel it now, waiting. It's tied to blood, the curse. Yes, royal blood. And your severing ritual. He nodded faintly. I reinforced it. Of course he had. Disciplined himself into emptiness. You fool! He almost smiled again. I know. The frost sealed across his heart fully. His breathing stuttered. Ilara, if I die, you won't. If I die, he forced out. Lift the ban. Let witches practice. Let them heal what kings broke. The frost reached his lips. Ilara. His fingers slipped weakly. The mate bond pulsed violently. Pain shot through her chest as if ice had touched her heart too. No. Her hands burned. The execution sigil on her forehead flared faintly beneath the veil. The magic she had suppressed since childhood stirred. Her father had bound it. She had let it sleep. She had believed it dangerous. But now, winter was killing the man who had chosen her in a hall full of enemies. She didn't hesitate. Ilara, one of the guards began cautiously. Do not touch him. She removed her veil. Slowly, deliberately. The sigil gleamed in full view. The guards froze. Not in fear, in recognition. She pressed both palms flat against the ice, sealing his chest. Heat surged. Not flame yet. Not destruction. Controlled. The frost hissed. Steam rose. He gasped. Ilara, be quiet. The sigil flared brighter. Magic roared up her spine like something released from a dam. It hurt. It had been bound for too long. The first wave of heat cracked the outer ice. The second drove deeper. The curse resisted. Ancient, royal, sealed into blood. The ice tightened violently around his heart. She felt it, like a vice. She leaned closer, teeth clenched. You will not take him. The magic surged again. This time it was not controlled. It was fire, not visible flame, but force. The frost exploded outward from his chest in a violent shatter. Guards stumbled back. Ice shards scattered across marble. He convulsed. His back arched. The frost retreated from his throat, from his jaw, from his ribs. But not entirely. A thin layer remained over his heart. The curse held there, central, anchored. She swayed, her breath ragged. She could not break it alone. It was tied to bloodline, to royal oath, to ancient pact. She leaned close to his ear. Choose me. His eyes flickered weakly. Choose life. The mate bond pulsed again, stronger, not fragile now, binding. You chose me in the auction hall. You chose me in the cathedral. Choose me now. The frost trembled. His fingers twitched weakly against hers. Elara, he breathed. I love you. The curse reacted violently to the words. The frost surged inward again. She pushed harder. Heat flooded the space between them. The mate bond ignited fully, not warm, blazing. The frost cracked. Hairline fractures shot across it. Then, it shattered, completely. Ice burst outward in a final, deafening crack. His body went limp. For one horrifying second, there was nothing. Then, his chest rose sharply. A ragged inhale, warm, real. The frost was gone. Steam lingered in the air. She collapsed forward against him, breathing hard, shaking. His arms moved weakly around her. Warm, fully warm. Elara, she lifted her head. His eyes were clear, not silver with frost, not clouded, clear. You burned it. No. Her voice was hoarse. I broke it. He studied her face. The sigil still glowed faintly. You saved me. She shook her head. You chose me. He exhaled weakly. And I would again. The hall was silent around them. The guards stared. Witnesses to a king who had nearly died for love. Witnesses to a witch who had broken an ancient royal curse. And in that silence, the kingdom shifted. Not through decree, not through law, through proof. Winter had met fire, and fire had not yielded. The hall did not erupt. It did not cheer. It did not gasp. It simply watched. Watched a witch kneel over a king. Watched frost shatter. Watched winter retreat. Watched him breathe again. He rose slowly, unsteady at first. She remained beside him, one hand still gripping his sleeve as though the curse might return if she let go. He didn't pull away, didn't look ashamed. He looked at the frost fragments scattered across the marble, then at the council, then at Lord Varen. Varen stood pale, rigid. The narrative he had carefully fed the court for years had just fractured in front of them. Kaelin straightened fully. His voice when he spoke was not weak. It was iron. Send word to every province. No one moved. He turned slightly. Now. Scribes rushed forward. Guards snapped to attention. The ban on witchcraft is lifted. Effective immediately. The words landed like thunder. A ripple of shock passed through the remaining courtiers. Varen stepped forward despite himself. Your Majesty. The temperature in the hall dropped sharply. I nearly died because a king feared love more than injustice. The statement was simple, controlled, unarguable. No more. He looked at her, not as a ruler, as a man. My queen. No hesitation, no calculation. She met his gaze. No veil now, no concealment. The execution sigil was still visible, but it no longer felt like a brand. It felt like a mark survived. He turned back to the hall. Any challenge to her authority is a challenge to mine. No one spoke. Not Rethmar, not Varen, not a single lord. The foreign envoy bowed slowly, deeply. Valthera appears stable. Kaelin's expression didn't soften. It is. Rethmar hesitated. Trade will continue. He had no leverage now, not after witnessing that, not after seeing a curse break under fire. The hall began to move again. Quiet, measured, but altered, irreversibly altered. That night there were no councils, no negotiations, no envoys, only a chamber still faintly warm from burned magic. She stood by the window, staring out at the city lights below. She felt different, not because she had saved him, because she had stopped hiding. He approached quietly behind her. No frost, no chill, only heat. Steady, real. He wrapped his arms around her waist. This time she didn't tense, expecting him to withdraw. He didn't withdraw. You terrified me. You nearly froze to death. I wasn't speaking of that. She turned slowly in his arms. His hand rose instinctively to her forehead, not to hide the sigil, to trace it. I thought I had built walls strong enough to protect my kingdom. You built walls strong enough to isolate yourself. He smiled faintly. I thought discipline made me strong. And it made me hollow. His hand slid to her jaw. You made me dangerous in a different way. She arched a brow. Dangerous? Yes. Because now, if anyone threatens you... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. She smiled slightly. I can defend myself. I am aware. He leaned down, not formal, not restrained. He kissed her, not as king, not as political symbol, as a man who had chosen love twice, and survived it. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. The curse is gone. For good? For our bloodline. His voice was quiet. Her breath caught slightly. For our son? For him. Winter would not claim their child. The mate bond pulsed between them. Not volatile now, not sharp. Steady, grounded. I chose you because I believed I could never love you. And I chose you because I believed you would never love me. He exhaled a soft laugh. We are not as clever as we thought. No, we were just afraid. He studied her face. Open now, unhidden. You are not something to fear. Neither are you. Outside, the city buzzed quietly. Whispers would spread by morning. A witch queen. A broken curse. A king who nearly died for love. But inside the chamber, there was no spectacle. Only warmth. Only breath. Only two people who had tried to escape feeling, and failed. I love you. Not shouted. Not defiant. Simply true. This time, nothing froze. She smiled softly. I know. He narrowed his eyes playfully. You are supposed to say it back. She leaned closer. I love you. And this time, nothing broke. Nothing cracked. Nothing shattered. Winter had ended, and it had not taken him with it. 3 months later, the council chamber felt different. Not because the table had changed, or the windows let in different light. Because the woman who sat at the head of it, unveiled, unafraid, had altered what power looked like in Valthera. Lord Varen stood before her, holding a revised trade agreement. The northern provinces have agreed to the new terms, Your Majesty. She took the document, scanning it quickly. Kaelin stood beside her, one hand resting lightly on the back of her chair. Not possessive. Present. And the delegation from the Eastern Territories? They arrive next week. They've requested an audience with you specifically. Varen's voice held something new. Not quite respect, but no longer contempt. She looked up. With me? They wish to discuss reopening the academies for magical study. A smile ghosted across her lips. Then we will receive them. Varen bowed and stepped back. When the chamber cleared, Kaelin turned to her. You're enjoying this? Watching Lord Varen bow to a witch queen? Yes. He laughed, a sound that still surprised her with its warmth. You're dangerous. You've said that before. I mean it more now. She rose from her chair, and his hand found hers instinctively. The mate bond hummed between them, constant as a heartbeat. They walked through the corridors together, and she noticed the way servants no longer averted their eyes, the way guards nodded with genuine deference, the way the palace had learned to breathe again. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Lifting the ban? Changing everything? He stopped, turning to face her fully. I regret that it took nearly dying to see clearly. His hand moved to her stomach, where the first signs of life had begun to show. But I regret nothing that led me here. She covered his hand with hers. Even the auction? Especially the auction. His eyes softened. I walked into that hall believing I was choosing safety. I walked out having chosen everything I was afraid of. And now? Now I'm afraid of nothing. He leaned down, kissing her forehead where the sigil had faded to a faint silver mark. No longer a brand of execution, but a reminder of survival. Liar, she whispered against his mouth. You're afraid I'll reorganize your study again. He pulled back, eyes widening in mock horror. You wouldn't. I already did. His groan made her laugh, and the sound echoed through the corridors, warm and alive and completely unafraid. Outside, snow began to fall. But inside the palace, winter had finally learned to coexist with fire, and neither would yield. Thank you for listening.